Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? Got a great one for you today. One that I didn't expect I would love as much as I did. I mean, sure, I figured the history of my favorite burger chain would be interesting, and I could burn through it in a single workday as I delivered groceries to other restaurants that weren't as good, but man, I was a third of the way done with it, and I was really invested in the history of In-N-Out Burger. Before we dig in, please subscribe if you haven't and give this video a like. I'm a trucker who reads about 100 books a year, and I make it my goal to share those books that other ground-level grunts like me would enjoy. Not everything is a boring beach read that your Wynot picked up in an airport. There are actually cool books out there. I find a lot of them every year. So if you help boost the channel, you're getting good books into the hands of people like you who want to read them. Okay, here's the skinny. The book is called In-N-Out Burger, a behind-the-counter look at the fast food chain that breaks all the rules. Bit of a mouthful of a title. The author is Stacy Perman. If you're an East Coaster and you've never been to In-N-Out, you might not get what the hype is. While a burger is, generally speaking, a burger, and most fast food tastes the same, In-N-Out is more than just a chain restaurant. There's an ethos, a set of values under it all that are set forth by their founders more than 70 years ago, and the whole process continues to this day. The book takes us all the way back to the 1940s. We get to meet Harry and Esther Snyder, who were both in the food services industry. Harry drove a bread truck and Esther worked in a restaurant. In fact, Harry delivered to Esther's restaurant, and that's how he met her. Classic love story. They got married. They decided to go into business for themselves in the booming post-World War II period of America. We were on the rebound after beating the Nazis in Europe and the imperialists in the Pacific, and there was no more exciting place to be than the West Coast. The Snyders started their restaurant in Baldwin Park, California. It was a 2-lane drive-through right across from their modest home. There was no sit-in dining. That would come later. Harry Snyder was a stickler for details and quality. He would only use the center of a tomato, for example, so that he could put the biggest slices on the burger. The rest got chucked. He was picky about the type of beef that he got, and he never had it frozen. Fries had to come from potatoes that were peeled on site. Everybody had to be able to see it all being made. The food was so good that people kept coming back over and over. Harry was incredibly focused on repeat business. More than being a cook, he was a businessman, and he was 100% committed to his restaurant. He was also friends with Carl Karcher, the founder of Carl's Jr., and they would bounce ideas off of each other all the time to figure out new ways to make their businesses better. Harry never set out to build a huge chain of restaurants. He just wanted the one. But he was so successful and his associates were so dialed in with his values that in order to help them advance their own careers, he had to start opening up at new locations. So it was that In-N-Out gained greater and greater popularity throughout Southern California, eventually expanding into Arizona and Nevada. At this point in their history, Harry and Esther had 2 sons who grew up in the business. Guy was the oldest, and he was a bit of a wild child, while Richard, the younger one, was a little bit more conservative and more committed to his father's vision for the company. Harry never went easy on the kids, especially as they grew up and started to work for him. They had to learn the same way he did, the way all of the other workers did. As time went on, it was Richard who grew into the role of successor and was then thrust into the CEO's chair in 1976 when Harry died. From there, the next few decades of the Snyder story get a little bit turbulent. Richard would see the company continue to expand while Guy went deeper into his career as a race car driver. He'd had a couple of bad crashes, and one in particular left him in chronic pain, and he soon developed, unfortunately, a drug addiction to manage that pain. Richard and Esther did what they could for him, but it was clear that Richard would have to be the future of In-N-Out, especially since Harry and Esther had determined that only a direct descendant of theirs could ever be in charge of the company. Yeah, unlike other big chain restaurants, In-N-Out is still a family business, not a cluster of files in some massive hedge fund's portfolio. This was a blessing and a curse, depending on how you look at it, and this is where the book got really fascinating for me. Tragically, Richard Snyder died in a plane crash in the early 90s. He had only been married for about 18 months, he had no children of his own, and had not formally adopted his stepdaughter, and that left the succession of the company in doubt. His brother Guy was able to straighten himself out and fill the CEO role, but a mere 6 years later, he would die of a drug overdose. Like Richard, Guy had stepdaughters, but he was divorced from their mother. However, he did have one biological daughter with his ex-wife. As she was only 12, this forced Esther Snyder, now in her late 70s, to become the CEO until little Lindsay could take the reins. Let me pause right here and say, holy crap, I never expected a book about a burger restaurant to have so much primetime drama in it, but man alive, I was blown away by the work that the author had to put into this. She cites a lot of data about the success rate of family businesses from generation to generation. Spoiler alert, after the third generation, most of them fail. In fact, into the third generation, most of them fail. That's probably why a lot of these restaurants go the IPO route and hire somebody to manage them as financial assets. This inevitably leads to changes in the business model that prioritize money over quality, which is exactly what happened to McDonald's. Go watch that Michael Keaton movie, The Founder, for more on how that whole thing went sideways. Since In-N-Out was built on values that are anathema to modern-day fast food, this put an incredible amount of pressure on Lindsay Snyder from a young age. People wondered, would she grow up to preserve what her grandparents had built, or would she sell it off and do what she wanted with her own life? There was no shortage of financial predators waiting in the wings to descend on this decades-old piece of West Coast Americana if she decided to pull that trigger. Fortunately for In-N-Out and all of its loyalists, when Lindsay was thrust into the driver's seat in her early 20s, she kept the car on track. Her beloved grandmother Esther died in 2006 at the age of 86. At this point, Lindsay was already on her second marriage and had children of her own, ensuring that Harry and Esther's vision of a dynasty had a pathway to the future. Now, Perman published this book in 2009, so it only tells the story up to that point, which includes an attempted takeover from inside the company by a man who wasn't related to the Snyders. That whole piece of drama was its own heart attack, and I recommend you read the book to see how it all played out. Since that time, Lindsay Snyder would divorce, remarry, divorce again, and remarry again, and she is the mother to 4 children in all. For my money, I can't imagine how many voices she had in her ear ever since she was a little girl, telling her what she had to grow up and become. Her youth was marked by tragedy as she saw her uncle and her dad die before she even turned 20, and suddenly her grandparents' company was in a constant state of tug-of-war, and she was kind of the rope. By all accounts, it sounds like her life has calmed down since then. She's got a solid footing under her, and she's carrying on the business and faith traditions of her family. Personally, I'm grateful. In-N-Out Burger is one of those things that's been a family favorite since I was a kid. My parents were from Downey and Burbank. I was born in Bellflower. So even though I'm a Vegas Valley product, I still spent a lot of time in SoCal growing up. My dad and my papa were always big on choosing In-N-Out over other burger places whenever they had a chance. I didn't understand it at first because In-N-Out didn't have Happy Meals or playgrounds and the fries weren't crispy like they were supposed to be. I had to come around to that in my teens. In fact, in my junior year of high school, In-N-Out came to my hometown of Henderson, Nevada. A friend of mine started working there, and she's still with the company 20 years later. Now her son, who goes to the same high school we did, works at that location where his mom got her start. When I was in college, another In-N-Out opened in Orem, Utah, where I worked at a bookstore. The drive-through line was 2 hours long and dominated the parking lot for months. There's a reason why this chain commands such loyalty from its customers, and if you want to understand why, you've got to understand who built it, and more important, what they built it on. In a sense, In-N-Out is a microcosm of the American experiment, where as long as they stick to the wholesome values they were built on, they'll endure forever. It just depends on each subsequent generation. This was an incredible book, and I'm really glad I found out about it. Earlier this year, I listened to a book about the Dodge brothers who started the Dodge Motor Company and their history. I should do a review of that one later. I think it was because of that this recommendation popped up. Like, oh, you like the history of American businesses? Check this out. Like I said, I'm glad that I found out about it. That's why I want you to read it and see what you think. Let me know what your take is when you finish in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and again, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Every time I find a book this good, I'm going to let you know about it. If you love reading and you can also drive an 18 speed, hey, you're not alone. Alright? Stay cool, drive safe, see you out there.